Okay, so this is f***ing awesome. At the request of my Discord DMs, I took a look at Project Stardust today, and I played this for like 5 hours straight and literally had to tear myself away from the game in order to make this video. Because if I hadn't, I probably would have just kept playing. I had an immense amount of fun with this game. And if you have any love for sci-fi franchises like Star Wars, Halo, Mass Effect, Battlestar Galactica, you are going to have a blast with this game. Just high and above, this might be some of the most fun you'll have. This game is the exact representation of what I wish that Roblox was more like, and it's one of the main reasons why I say that a lot of the stolen IP stuff on Roblox is a bit of a moral gray area. Because the idea behind Project Stardust, to put it simply, is impossible in the AAA gaming space, or the legal gaming space for that matter. And the game itself, just like a lot of other games on the platform, is admittedly a ticking time bomb. At any moment, any of these IP holders could show up and go, "Your game is gone!" Just like what happened to Transformers Crossfire relatively recently. And if that happened, which it's pretty likely to happen to be honest, that would be a real shame, because this game is something special. Anyways, what is Project Stardust? Well, it's a game that's basically a collaboration of a whole bunch of different sci-fi franchises with all of their different spaceships being ported into one game where you take two sides of people and basically tell them, hey, you see all these cool-ass sci-fi ships? Go kill each other with them. A simple concept to be sure, but an incredibly fun one at that. There's just something special about taking a UNSC light frigate and blasting a Star Destroyer with a Mac cannon. 8,000 damage from the Mac gun. Oh my god, get fucked. Or sending a bunch of ARC 170s and TIE fighters to go harass a Covenant Corvette. I mean, come on, this is the kind of stuff that I would literally see in like a dream game, not an actual game that you can physically go play right now. Which is why it's an absolute tragedy that this game is only sitting at roughly 207 concurrent players as of right now. It doesn't surprise me that much because, wow, what a shock, a game that's actually kind of cool doesn't have anyone playing it, but it's pretty standard for that. As for the mechanics of the game itself, these are a little bit hit or miss, and there's admittedly a lot of complexity when you first start, and then once you sort of get things down, I think a lot of the complexity falls away, and then we start to run into some problems. But I'll talk about the good things and the things that I liked first. Probably the most interesting and most fun thing about Project Stardust is just how much it matters with the facing of your ships. Because these are large spaceships, it's not like they move around like a fighter would. You can't turn on a dime, you can't move really quickly, and so you really need to be paying attention to all of your surroundings that you're working with, as well as the physical orientation of your ship, which probably matters the most. The way the game is programmed, your guns are only able to shoot at certain fixed angles, and every different ship has different angles that are the best firing angle that you can have. But in some cases, based on how some projectiles fire, sometimes it's best to be in the best possible firing angle, and sometimes it's not. A great example was when I was using an Imperial light frigate that fires torpedoes out the bottom of the ship, and then they go towards the target. I was playing on the quite frankly breathtaking High Charity map from Halo, and because I was playing on that map, there was a bunch of skyscrapers. Now, trying to fight people head-on with my light frigate isn't really a great idea. Surprise, surprise, if I go try to attack a Star Destroyer with a light frigate, I'm gonna get my ass whooped. So what I ended up doing was tilting my entire starship upside down, because that way, if I fired my torpedoes, I could fire them over top of the skyscrapers. It was such a cool moment for me, and something that almost certainly wouldn't happen in a game with less attention to detail and less interesting mechanics as this one. One of the other things that I thought was really cool about the game was the fact that progression in this game, at least at the very beginning, is pretty reasonable. To my extreme surprise, especially when reading the dumbass rules that pop up in the very beginning of when you launch the game, it's actually quite reasonable. There's a quote-unquote game rule which says that if you collaborate or use alt accounts in order to grind experience and damage in order to unlock more stuff, that they're going to wipe all of your data. which immediately screams to me, our progression is extremely grindy and a huge waste of your time, which would force people to have to feel the need to do this, and because we want people to spend money, if you do that, we're gonna wipe your data. And while I'm sure it's like that later on, because I looked at the XP numbers, I do have to be impressed that at the beginning, you can get a huge variety of ships relatively quickly. I played with all manners of stuff and probably had the opportunity to play with even more had I been paying attention to the stuff earlier instead of just kind of picking what I had and not going into the progression too much until about roughly 45 minutes into my play session. And I mean, while we're on the topic of progression, holy shit, the amount of ships in this game. It says that the game was created in 2018, and nowhere is that more evident than the amount of spaceships that you can get in this game. It is absolutely baffling, and it was so cool to go through and see all of these different ships that, frankly, I haven't seen for years. Like, if I'm being honest, I never thought that there would be a game where I would be able to fly around a ship from the Zan Consortium. Like, I can't ever think that that was going to happen, yet here we are. Now, that said, while I had a lot of good things to say about this game, there were some things that I wasn't a huge fan of. And unfortunately, because of just how old this game is and how I assume set in their ways the developers and the dedicated player base of this game is, I can't imagine a lot of this stuff changing because, like I said, it's probably been this way literally since forever, and any even attempts at changing it would probably cause a whole lot of backlash. But I've got to bring this stuff up because it's shocking to me that after so many years of existing, presumably on the platform, that this stuff is still around. Now, the number one problem that I had throughout the entirety of me playing this game is the fact that at all times, every single player, including the enemy team, is marked on your HUD. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know. I get that this game was modeled after games like War Thunder and World of Tanks. That's where these big tech tree things come from, and it's where most of the mechanics, I imagine, are also mostly lifted from. That being said, one of the things that I can't stand in World of Tanks is the fact that your tanks are invisible completely until you get spotted, and then you get wall hacked for the entire enemy team. It's infuriating, and it makes me just not play the game. I could not play World of Tanks because of that reason. It drove me crazy. Now imagine my frustration when in this game, where you have potentially a giant open map with very little cover, and despite that, you're permanently wall hacked by every single person on the enemy team. This one mechanic completely upends so much potential strategy, it's baffling. Do you want to flank? Well, too bad, because you're always on the map. Do you want to take cover and wait until you can peek out for a safe moment? Well, too bad, because the enemy can always see right as you're about to peek and be waiting for you. Do you want to try to get a long-range ship and put yourself up against an asteroid so that way you're slightly camoed? Well, too bad, because you're always on the map, so they can always see you and shoot you immediately. And not only are you just always seen on the map, no, not just that, they can also see exactly how far away you are from them, along with how much health and shields you have. Two more things that just, like, what the fuck? Why? By knowing exactly how far away people are, it leads to these standoffs where two fleets just sort of sit here, and if anyone pushes up, whoever's the first person to go forward gets obliterated and dies instantly. Because every single ship on that team just starts focus firing the closest person, because that's the person who comes into attack range first, and then they die. That's it. And again, if you want to try to break this standoff, you want to try to flank, you want to try to go around, you can't do that. Ever. Not only that, but because your health and shields are always shown, it causes people to immediately see who's getting shot, who has low health, and then target and pick those people off. And then it's just like, I don't get it. I really don't get it. Or maybe I do get it. I think the idea behind this initially was to make sure that you understood the mechanics of the game when it came to locking on and picking your targets, and so that way it was easier to make sure that you were sending your fighters at the correct targets, and because the auto-aim in the game also factors in with the lock-on system. But I would argue, once again, that the lock-on system in of itself and the auto-aim system in of itself are equally as problematic. being able to pick your target in order to send fighters out there or do any other action that requires you to have a targeted target, that's fine. I don't have any problems with that, obviously not. But the game having built-in auto-aim on top of all this stuff once again leads to evasive maneuvers very often not mattering whatsoever, because even if you take an evasive, someone can snipe you from a ridiculous range away. But it also makes the otherwise engagement distances for effectively killing people way further than they probably ought to be. I really don't know if the intended game design was to have people sitting 8 miles away from each other playing sniper battles and just shooting hails of lasers while standing pretty much perfectly still, but that's what a lot of the matches devolve into. And I understand that there are ways to break these sorts of stalemates with longer range ships, things like the Mac Cannon and the UNSC, or the extremely overpowered Covenant corvettes that can do damage over significant distances. We'll get there eventually, I'm sure. But the general pace of the match is people just sniping at each other in these battle lines that you can never break and never make any progress on because you aren't allowed to flank or make any plays. You just can't do it. And it's not like there can't be compromise here. You can still make it so that way if you hover over an enemy and click your lock-on button, that it shows you their name, their health, etc. It can even show the distance, but only once you've physically seen and locked on to a target. Same goes for the auto-aim. Obviously, certain attacks like missiles and such are going to auto-aim regardless, but should lasers and whatnot always auto-aim? I don't think so. But that doesn't mean that that system still can't exist with the removal of being able to permanently see everybody. Just make it so that way when you lock onto someone, it puts all of the UI elements that are normally always available. Problem solved. And like I said, is there any chance that this stuff gets changed? No, absolutely not. And that's a bummer, that sucks, but I'm sure it won't happen. That said, if it were up to me, I would plead with the developers to at the very least attempt or test out what would happen if the game didn't have auto lock on all the time and didn't always tell you where the enemies were all the time. It's not like it's hard to ID a big ass spaceship and see the giant lasers coming from it in order to find out where you're getting shot from. I promise you, it's not just going to be a crapshoot all the time. The only possible thing that I can come up with is maybe if you're playing on a lower graphics setting, then the ships don't render in, and that's why they did it. That's my best guess. And even if that is the case, that's a shitty reason to completely upend and make the whole game less fun and strategic. Anyways, let's talk about balance, because I mentioned the Covenant Corvette earlier, and holy shit, this thing is a mess. Now, just like a lot of my other videos where I take a look at more casual Roblox games, even though this game claims to be a competitive Roblox game, yeah, right, you can see the people on the map at all times. But either way, I'm not faulting them too much for balance, nor do I really care too much about balance. A lot of this stuff is using iconic ships and having fun with those iconic ships, and the balance between them, not that huge of a deal. That said, I did run into some pretty glaring issues when it came to the balance between the UNSC ships and the Covenant ships. First, we get to talk about the UNSC ships, which I felt were actually just a more balanced version of the Covenant ships, more than likely. The UNSC frigates are glass cannons. They don't have any shields, which means that any damage they take is permanent. Their close-range machine gun cannons are not very good whatsoever. Their missile systems generally can do a fair amount of damage and auto-lock on, but are also not the greatest. And really the big saving grace here, of course, is the big-ass Mac gun. A skill shot that's not extremely hard to land, but if you do, does big damage. With the trade-off, of course, being that the cooldown for it is pretty long. Now, the first Covenant Corvette you can get, and by proxy I'm pretty sure the second one you can get too, which I think is just a more overpowered version than the first one, but I don't have it, so I can't be sure. Regardless, the first Covenant Corvette you get basically just does everything the UNSC ship does, but infinitely better. First of all, it has Banshee fighter escorts that you can use. So if enemy fighters are sent at you, you can use them to intercept the fighters that are coming at you, negating the damage significantly. Sure, the UNSC frigate has point defense systems to deal with fighters, but generally fighter-to-fighter combat seems to be more effective in my experience. Second, and probably most important, is that this thing has shields. And yeah, I get it, UNSC don't have shields, Covenant does. you know, not the end of the world. But just having shields alone means that all of the damage that you take is not permanent. As long as you take a little bit of damage and then take cover, then you can get your shields back. Not only that, but the shield mechanics on the Covenant ships themselves are a little bit interesting, where it seems like if you take slight damage, it regenerates significantly faster, whereas if you take heavy damage and it pops the shield, then it either doesn't come back at all or takes a really long time. It's a cool balancing mechanic because it means that, like I was saying earlier, if you hit one of these Covenant ships with a Mac gun, it just pops their shields straight away and it makes them a sitting duck for any other ships. Where'd your shields go, bitch? Get macked, asshole! It would be a cool mechanic if the weapon systems on these Covenant ships weren't extremely broken. The first Covenant ship has an active ability that speeds it up, a laser attack that's borderline hit scan that you basically can't miss that has a ton of range, this concussion bomb attack that appears to home in on the target and is just a normal attack that you use while firing your lasers, and finally, this big fuck off laser beam that you just point at the enemy ship and it does a boatload of damage. And the best part, that big fuck off laser beam has way less cooldown than the Mac gun. So you can spam the shit out of it, and while you're spamming the shit out of it, continue to put on damage with the lasers. I was getting cooked by this Covenant ship. I bought it, and then, well, the damage stats at the end of the round kind of speak for themselves. I don't know if this Covenant ship was just added way later, or if the UNSC ships are just mega ass, but this is really, really bad. Like, hilariously terrible when it comes to balance. I don't know what the hell you're supposed to do to beat this, and I'm sure there's some sort of answer, but I couldn't find it. Like I said, not the end of the world. It's not like people are just spamming these in every lobby and it ruins every single match, and it's not like I wasn't able to be successful with other types of ships, but it just is a shame when, like, it feels like maybe they took the lore too seriously. Like, I get that the UNSC ships are like 5-1 or 10-1 with per Covenant ship, but we don't need to translate that into the game, guys. It's a video game. That's not fun. Either way, none of this stuff even holds a candle to the fact that you can see people on your screen at all times anyway, so it's not really the end of the world. And I mean, on final notes, when it comes to negative aspects of the game, I was pretty dumbfounded that there's no way to invert the flight controls. You'd think in this sort of almost flight simulator-esque game that would be a no-brainer, but it was driving me nuts, constantly going the wrong way or pressing the wrong accelerate key. I wish the keys were rebindable, but as of right now, they're not. Or at least they don't appear to be. If they are, I would love to know how, because I couldn't figure it out. Anyways, with that, I think I'm pretty much wrapping up here. I suppose the last final mention that I can do is that the map design and the maps in this game are pretty breathtaking. I loved all of them. I thought they were all super interesting. I was a little bit salty when I played on the Scarif map, and it was basically just a big old open field with no cover, but I also fully realized that this honestly adds its own layer of depth to the game. Most maps have cover, some have more than others, but some maps are just gonna have none. Sometimes it's literally just two ships, like action figures, just smashing into each other until one of them wins, and I really don't think there's anything wrong with that. Except for when that's the forced gameplay mechanic due to the mechanics of the game on every map, but it wouldn't be like that on a lot of these other maps. That is assuming that you didn't have permanent wall hacks. Regardless, even with the permanent wall hacks, I still think that this game is absolutely worth your time. I still think that you should play it. I still think it's a ton of fun, so I'll link it in the description. Naturally, if you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't, don't. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time.